Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a B-movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie I Am Omega, starring Mark Dacascos. So I Am Omega is basically a kind of mockbuster cash-in from the I Am Legend film starring Will Smith, and to a degree the Omega Man as well with Charlton Heston. So this is obviously, we've seen, as I say, plenty of mockbusters before, especially from Asylum. But this is probably one of the better efforts that I've seen by them, largely because I think Mark Dacascos is quite a charismatic, likeable character on screen, as he is in most of his films, especially if you're a sort of a B-movie genre fan. I'm sure you've probably seen some movies of his that you like at least. So I was wondering if that's what actually have the sort of original ending as in the actual I Am Legend book, which is very sort of well-respected book. The film versions generally have kind of changed things compared to the book, and I was wondering perhaps if this sort of B-movie version would actually stick to the original ending, but it doesn't. It does actually veer quite far from the story, to be honest with you, probably because it doesn't want to be a direct adaptation of the book, for probably it would end up being costing more money, I would imagine. So, but what you've got, I guess it sets up relatively similar. You've actually got Mark Dacascos' character playing a guy called Renchant, which is, I'm guessing, a play on the Richard Matheson, name. It sounds like Richard when they say it, but it's Renchant. Anyway. So he's, we're told he's some kind of, well, we didn't tell straight away, he's some kind of military sort of special forces type who is living on his own. We're not really sure what's happened with the apocalypse. We just know it's an apocalypse, and the world is crawling with these zombie types, which I'll come on to in just a second. We see a sort of a brief flashback. Actually, the first scene in the film is a flashback saying his sort of wife and child ultimately getting attacked by these sort of creatures, and I have to say that first scene actually looks very cheap, and I think maybe doesn't set the tone particularly well for the film to start with. The majority of the first act is really like you see in, for example, like the Will Smith I Am Legend film. It is actually Mark Dacascos' character just sort of having to deal with this sort of isolation and sort of being on his own. He's kind of got this kind of mannequin set up in his house and things like that, and he's starting to go mad. He keeps hearing the kind of his radio go on when he knows it's not on, and he keeps having to tell himself that it's not on. Things like that. He's going out to sort of get supplies, and he sort of sees this, the corpse. I'm guessing he's kind of visits fairly regularly. Sort of has a sort of conversation with it. Things like that. So that follows fairly sort of, typically from the actual I Am Legend film book, whatever. But it kind of branches off a little bit and does its kind of own thing, which kind of turns into a bit more of a sort of a standard action film. But before I come on to that, really, if you've seen I Am Legend, or you've read the book, or watched Omega Man, or The Last Man on Earth, something like that, basically the premise of those films is essentially everyone's got transformed into a kind of vampire-like creature. And they're pretty much vampires by all sort of definitions. In the film versions, they kind of have varying degrees of this, but in the book, that's pretty much what they are. But they're kind of explained away in more of a scientific sort of means, really, rather than a kind of supernatural one. And the character that Mark Dacascos plays, or the survivor ultimately in each of those adaptations, in those ones anyway, they're somehow sort of immune to the virus which has swept over the earth. And in the book, he really is the last man alive, but in the film adaptations, that he's tending not to be so much. But in this film, they don't actually have vampires. What they actually have are these kind of zombie creatures, for lack of a better word, but they almost look a little bit lizard-like, I have to say. So kind of lizard men / zombies. And the important thing here is that they aren't sentient. They're more like just sort of lumbering animals, really, rather than kind of independently thinking creatures. This is what they pretty much are in all of the rest of the adaptations, to a certain degree. Maybe less so in the Will Smith one, to be fair. But here they are they're just animals, plain and simple. They can come out in the day as well as the night as well. So they're actually quite different from what you see in sort of previous adaptations. And what's also different as well, you get this. He receives this message from this sort of girl who he's kind of trapped in the city. He's kind of on the outskirts, and we find out that his actual plan, Mark Dacascos' plan, is actually to ultimately destroy the city because there's so many of these sort of zombie things in there. But he gets kind of coerced by these two other sort of like hillbilly types sort of turn up on his door to go and rescue this girl. And we're told that she's actually got the sort of the immune sort of DNA within her blood, not him. So there's kind of a bit of a change there, and they, he gets kind of coerced into sort of helping him. So the three of these guys, these two sort of hillbilly types, and Mark Dacascos' character end up having to go sort of, and sort of try and rescue this girl, and then escape from the city against the zombies. And of course, the twist of the ending. So spoiler: these humans, these two sort of hillbillies, are actually have their own agenda as well, and actually end up sort of double crossing. So that's the basic sort of premise of the film. Now, the negative things to this being an asylum film, it is low budget. It is very, very cheesy. There are some massive plot holes in this as well. Mark Dacascos' character gets shot, I think, 3 times at the end of the film, but he still manages to sort of push a car up a hill and do some kickboxing fighting with like the bad guy at the end. So things like that, for example. So it maybe goes almost too far where you can kind of say, oh, you'll switch off your brain. It's kind of just suspension of disbelief and things like that. I think maybe it pushes it a little bit too far to really sort of forgive those sort of little faux pas, you might say. I think, as far as I said, the second half of the film, for me, I felt really just sort of degenerated somewhat into a kind of stereotypical, sort of action film. Now, in regard to the acting, I think this is a difficult thing to judge, because I think Mark Dacascos is a reasonable actor. He's had quite a long film career, never really broke into the mainstream as such, but he's had a fairly established career, and I recognise one of these two hillbillies as well as seeing him and other stuff. So they've done stuff, and this is a relatively small cast. So I didn't think the acting was that bad, but I think the direction wasn't great, which in turn made the acting not look so good and a little bit cheesy. So I'll give you an example. Early on in the film, as you see in the sort of in most of these adaptations, kind of the protagonist, Mark Dacascos, is sort of defending his home against these sort of attacks by these zombies, in this one anyway. And there's one scene, for example, where it's just, he's got one behind him and he's kind of looking towards the camera. So this one, we think initially he's going to sort of get got by behind. But of course, he sort of set a trap which sort of swings him up in the air. And he doesn't even look. He just kind of like, sort of rolls his eyes and drinks his beer or whatever he's doing, and it just looked really cheesy and really crap. And I don't think it wasn't Mark Dacascos' fault. It was really just the direction of the film and things like that. Decisions like that make the film look a bit crap and a bit sort of cheesy and cheap. But I actually think that the bits where you kind of see Mark Dacascos' character sort of having to deal with the sort of the loneliness and stuff, I think are fairly good. I don't think it's brilliant. I think Mark Dacascos is noted a cheapy flick. I don't think he's really trying to act his socks up in this film at all. But he's just kind of going for the motions, but doing a reasonable job. The actual zombie makeup, I think, it looks fairly good. As I said, they look kind of like lizard men type to me. So they're quite interesting to look at. Some of the sort of like the gore effects are used on CGI blood and things like that, which I know some of the people aren't big fans of. One quite interesting thing is even if you get a splash of blood on you, it potentially affects you, and they have to use sort of some sort of alcohol ultimately to sort of sterilise it, which I thought was quite a neat touch. But some of the other effects do look a little bit. Some of the sort of the sort of generated effects don't look particularly good. And the sort of the sets aren't brilliant. I mean, he's meant to have this kind of fortress house, but he's got like patio doors and stuff, and really just quite a flimsy fence and things like that. Not too bad of an effort by the asylum for this one. I think it's it's not a bad film. I think I should say primarily that's for me. It was for Mark Dacascos, and if you're wondering if there's plenty of sort of martial art fights, there is as well. So if you're a Mark Dacascos fan, he's a particularly good martial artist. And he shows off a lot of moves in this and fights zombies with nunchucks and things like that. So it's great to watch, Mark Dacascos versus post-apocalyptic zombies. So there you go. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. Not a bad effort from the Asylum. I've certainly seen worse, but I think ultimately the budget couldn't really match the sort of the film sort of in what it wanted to do. So there you go, 4 out of 10. Let me know what you think about it. How do you think it compared to the other adaptations of the I Am Legend story? Leave me a comment and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.